It was about a dozen years ago. It was right after a contested election. Barack Obama had just taken the White House from the Republicans. Joe Biden was the vice president. I was concerned because there was all this manipulation going on. And I got a call from an interesting guy, PhD from Stanford, mathematician, brilliant man, mentored by Warren Buffett, mentored by Milton Friedman. Anyway, he called me and he said, hey, I've been following your work on naked short selling and all the things that you're doing. And I'm telling you, you're on the right track, and let me see how I can help you. That was a dozen years ago. The man was Patrick Byrne. It was interesting. I saw him on a media interview just a couple of days ago, and I said, hey, that's Patrick, the guy who helped me 12 years ago. So I got in touch with him, and I asked him to tell us what's been going on with all of this election fraud. Join me in the Economic War Room, where we speak with Dr. Patrick Byrne. Patrick Byrne, welcome to the Economic War Room.
Kevin, good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you. Hey, for full disclosure to the audience, Patrick and I have known each other for a while. It's been about a dozen years. We worked together in combating naked short selling. And we've invited Patrick into the NSIC Institute. In fact, he was one of our initial benefactors. Our first big gift to get the Institute launched came from Patrick. And he's spoken at our training events. So a lot's happened, Patrick, since we first got together, and even a lot more has happened since you left Overstock.com.
Indeed.
I'm surprised when I saw that you were jumping in on this. I know you've got the background in mathematics and all of that, but what about all of this intrigued you to get involved in election fraud as an issue?
Well, I view this as the completion and the final act of a chapter that started 15 years ago, frankly. And you know that I jumped from Overstock.com a year ago and came forward about my involvement in certain matters. To me, this is the last act of that play. I knew that they were going to do something this election, and it's too much of a backstory to know why. But I knew that they were going to do something. Around July, August, I fell in with a team of cyber professionals, and let me tell that side of the story too, which will get to your bigger question, which is in Dallas 2018, there was an election that was compromised. There were so many irregularities in it. The government of Texas had a governor's blue ribbon panel, and they hired this cyber team to study what was so strange about why all these irregularities in the Dallas 2018 election. So that team had 2 years to put together what the rest of America has had about 20 days to understand. And that is that there's about a dozen ways you can hack these systems. They're quite porous, and So I got mixed up with them and a related cyber group in August and started funding things. And then it kind of turned into let's say a bad news bears, we like to call it, where it's various cyber sleuths and hackers and military intelligence personnel and investigators and just honest, concerned citizens. And it turned into this bad news bear. So we had a lot reverse engineered before the election even went down. In fact, a sideline as a footnote to research someday, they had a couple briefings, multiple briefings in August, September with the Department of Homeland Security, and CISA, the cyber infrastructure group, refused to attend the meetings. The group that is in charge of signing off on this stuff refused to attend the meetings within the DHS.
That's shocking. Yeah,
kibosh.
The same group that said this is the most secure election in history refused to look at it. You know, we actually had White Hat hacker on the Economic War Room 2 years ago, codenamed Jekyll. And he walked through all of this stuff on our show 2 years ago. And we tried to send it to people to take a look at. It was all documented. And they didn't even pay any attention. It's very sad.
Well, it's sad, or it's coincidences this big, maybe aren't coincidences.
Yep, no question. So you got, you said this is a 15-year story for you. I know that You've got the Deep Capture blog, and you've covered the criminal activity that's been in our financial system for years, and you found it. You uncovered it when you were heading Overstock, because they were manipulating shares and doing the very same naked short selling that I found foreign actors doing in order to take down our financial system. Tell us how that morphed into this.
Well, I have viewed it as, I think the oligarchy has two wings, and one wing is the financial elite, the financial system, and the other wing is the deep state. And those are the two wings of the oligarchy. And so I've been on this, and that was, actually the full story is up on Deep Capture, but I was sort of given an assignment in 2006 to get to the bottom of those two things. And who gave me that assignment? It's all written up there on Deep Capture. But so to me, this was all related. And I was actually offered a bribe 2 years ago to keep silent. And I knew that they were going to, because of that, they asked me to keep silent until this election. And I knew that this election was going to be hacked. And so I was out there with a group of people trying to set traps for it and reverse engineer it as quickly as we could. So the truth is, we've had the rough outline of what happened. We knew by November 5th or 6th. And then there was sort of a week of getting data and pulling data and humping the numbers, as they say, and then coming to DC and starting to offer it to the mainstream news and to the campaign and to the people around President Trump. And as you can guess, the mainstream news not only shut a door in our face, they shut a door and they welded it shut. And, you know, they do not want to know about this. But people around the president were interested. Sidney Powell had pretty much figured it. She had sussed it out on herself. What we showed up with was sort of the missing data pieces. She had the picture of how it worked. We brought in the missing pieces that were basically the data and the cyber side of it. So that's how it all sort of came together.
Yeah, and one of the things I picked up on an interview, and knowing you personally, you're a diehard libertarian. And I heard you say you did not vote for President Donald J. Trump. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was never a never-Trumper. My attitude towards him was the same as when President Barack Obama got elected, which was I didn't vote for the man, but he's the president, and it didn't matter one whit to me. The day after Obama got elected or the day after Trump elected, he was the president. And so I did not vote for him. I'm a small L libertarian. I'm not really a huge member of the party. But Milton Friedman used to define himself as a small L libertarian, a small R Republican, a libertarian Republican, both with small letters. I mean, that's probably a good statement of where I am.
Yeah. Well, and you also have the Stanford PhD. I know that you were friends with Milton Friedman and Warren Buffett. I mean, you've got an intellectual capacity. And bottom line is, you looked at all of this, looked at the statistics and the data and the information. You certainly understand computer systems. I mean, having built one of the biggest online retailers in the world, this all looked funny to you, right?
It's all, this is my mother's milk, and it's easy for me to see what happened here, and this is far easier to hack than Venmo or PayPal, anything like that. In fact, the hackers I'm working with describe this. They rate this now, the Dominion system, on in terms of hackability or security, on a scale of 1 to 10. They put it at a 2 and maybe a 1. I mean, I can walk you through. There's 8 ways from Sunday you can hack these machines. It's ridiculous. Well, almost makes you wonder who certified it.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you to walk through some of the findings that the hackers came up with and some of the things that just really stood out, the top most important elements of why this 2020 election was hacked. We can prove it, what you've seen, and that sort of thing. So take a break, and we'll come back with Patrick Byrne.
Our next president should not be chosen by the media, big tech, or a single political party. He should be chosen by the counting of every legal vote. We, the people, must defend the integrity of our electoral process. We must ensure that an unlawful vote by one does not disenfranchise the vote of another. Let's make sure that we take the time to get it right before we declare a winner to this presidential election. Protect your right to free and fair elections. Visit everylegalvote.com.
We've been speaking with Dr. Patrick Byrne, the founder of Overstock, a guy with a PhD from Stanford, a guy that was buddies with Warren Buffett and Milton Friedman. And we're talking about some of the unusual things that his team, a team he worked with, found in the 2020 presidential election in particular. So, Patrick, tell us, what has the research uncovered?
Well, what they did was, in a sense, the Democrats are correct in that they keep saying the fraud wasn't widespread. Well, it was very strategic and very focused. It was indeed focused, not widespread. It was focused on 6 counties. They figured out that if you jack, in the sense of hijack, like carjacking, if you election jack in 6 counties, in America, you can steal the nation. You don't have to steal the whole nation, just steal 6 counties. And those counties are the ones where Atlanta, Philly, Detroit, Milwaukee, Maricopa County, which is Greater Phoenix, and Clark, which is Greater Vegas. You steal those 6 places, or even just a few of them, you flip the states that they're in, which flips the Electoral College, which flips the nation. So really, stealing the United States comes down to stealing 6 counties. But boy, in those counties, they want what I call full-on goon. And those are the 6 counties that you hear about this crazy stuff, everything from them shutting down counting in the middle of the night. Whoever heard of that? And shutting down counting in Atlanta and make everyone go home. But some of the Republicans didn't go home, and they stuck around, and they got movies of people sneaking in with backpacks and such filled with ballots. So that general plan happened in all those 6 places, things like that, along with other kinds of fraud and Sharpie ballots. In the last week or the last few days, actually, we uncovered even a side of it I've not made public until today. But it was that beyond, I've been saying that publicly for about 10 days. Beyond that, they did another kind of cheating where they basically took places that were already blue, deep blue, and made them even more intensely blue. They also took places that were red, very red, and made them just a shade less red because no one would notice. So they took counties, and we know of at least 2 states, we can document this, where there were heavily red counties. And they figured, if we go up to a place that's 66% Republican and we steal, we steal 600 votes, 300 votes from this town, that town. So it ends up only being 61% Republican. It's still going to look like, wow, it's not going to look strange to anyone. And so they stole small amounts of ballots in these rural areas. What they didn't do, and they were smart, is they didn't take a place that was just a little bit red and flip it blue, because that would get too much attention and people staring. But they went to places that were intensely red and made them a little bit less red by stealing these rural areas, by stealing small batches of votes in different towns. And then they took big cities that were heavy blue and they made them heavy blue. That was the strategy.
That's their answer. The whole answer is, we clearly couldn't have been stealing here because, look, Trump won all these counties where our system is operating. But that's not a valid answer, is it?
Correct. We can establish what the expected vote should have been within a fairly narrow band, looking at such matters as voter registration in that county over the 4 years since the first election. And that is generally a very good predictor of what then is going to happen in the election that follows. And it is in most of the country, but in certain counties, you use that and you can predict what should have come to Trump and what did come to Trump. And there's a marked difference. And they clearly had this strategy. You can even see it geographically isolated. And then we have sent people into those counties and we have gotten the goods. I mean, we have physical evidence. We have obtained the physical evidence of this, because these machines do create auditable trails. And we have acquired physical evidence which proves absolute proof of fraud. Like we've put in for emergency order. This is all shown up in filings for emergency orders with judges over the weekends. But at the heart of some of those emergency filings that are going on is that kind of hard proof. And I'm talking about like the actual physical proof.
Yeah.
So
that's phenomenal.
Just what they did. Go ahead.
That's breaking, because that's what everybody's saying. Well, where's the evidence? I said, there's plenty of evidence. Well, where's the proof? You're saying that we have somewhere Someone's got the proof. They've gone to looked at the machines. Because I know, I mean, I understand the logic argument. You can't get 80 million votes, the more than any other presidential candidate in history, and win the fewest counties of a winning candidate in history. And you know, those are statistical anomalies. But what you're saying is that somebody's looked at the machines, validated that there was theft that's taken place, looking at the logs and the tapes and the drives. Right. That is amazing. And the Trump legal team has this.
Yes, the Trump legal team has that. I want to emphasize that the Trump legal team are a bunch of smart people. They don't need us. We probably just accelerated things a lot. They had figured out, they had smelled skunk, and they had sort of put together what had happened. They had put it together in a legal way. We showed up with missing pieces to the puzzle, the data and the hard evidence and sort of the technical explanation of how what happened. They knew what happened. They didn't know how it happened. We showed up with the hard evidence of how it happened. Yeah, and we have, I mean, at this point, there's all kinds of, these guys who are saying, where's the evidence? They don't understand that there's all kinds of evidence. There's testimonial evidence in the form of affidavits. There's documentary evidence. There's video evidence. We have it all. We have the tapes that show things that have been changed. We have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits. We also have the understanding of how you would, thanks to this group that did the deconstruction of the Dallas election, we knew how they would go about doing it in these 12 different methods. And so we really knew exactly what to look for in each place. And what do you know, you see, and it all dovetails beautifully. If you were going to use these machines to hack an election, you would expect the people who participate, both the voters and the precinct workers, to have certain experiences. And what do you know, they did. We have affidavits from hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands at this point, who did have those experiences. And you would expect certain statistical irregularities. And what do you know, you get these, I mean, outrageous quadrillion to one statistical oddities, like the chances that you would go and win the Powerball lottery and then go back the next week and win it again. The chance that you would win 2 in a row like that, well, that happened. Things that outrageous happened in numerous precincts in numerous counties. So we have them dead. We have them dead to rights. There's no question in my mind. I guess I put things this way. I used to think 2 weeks ago that the possible outcomes were a Biden presidency, a Trump presidency, or a civil war. Based on what we have now, I can say confidently, there is no way Joe Biden will be seated as president. There's no court. If the Supreme Court turns a blind, and this will all end up there, if the Supreme Court turns a blind eye to the proof and that we have, then there'll never be election integrity again, because they're then signaling it isn't what Article 2, Section Clause 1, Clause 2, or whatever says. It's you do what you want. There's at the end of the day no repercussions. If they let that stand, then the goons will never be stopped again.
Yeah, well, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover what's happening. You know, you're right on the Powerball. There would be an immediate investigation if somebody won the Powerball two times in a row, and they would stop the check instantly. And right. This is that sort of effort. We got to get it to the Supreme Court. We'll talk about the path to the Supreme Court. We'll talk about what we should be doing about our elections, but we need to take a break, and we'll talk about that next.
Our children will ask how we acted when we could choose to stand for free and fair elections. Back in 1961, Ronald Reagan warned we would face such a moment.
But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Wouldn't you rather tell your loved ones that you helped keep America free?
Welcome back. Where we left off with Dr. Byrne, we were discussing the findings of his forensic research and the analysis that he's done that said, you know, it's like winning 2 Powerball lotteries in a row to get the outcome that the media is telling us has happened. And so I want to go back to that. Patrick, it is an impossibility, and yet most people in America just say it's over, let it go. Why shouldn't we do that?
Well, let me run some numbers by you. Imagine you were in an era that was 96%, a city that was 96% Democrat, and you had 100 people come in randomly and vote. The chance that all 100 vote for Biden are still, it's 1.6%, and the calculation is 0.96 raised to the 100th power. It's 0.16% or 1.6%. That's 60 to 1 against. The chance that you could have 1,000 people come in and vote all for Biden, if 96% of the city were Biden, 1,000 people voting Biden in a row, that's about a quadrillion up to 1. That's about the chance of 2 Powerball victories in a row. There are areas. There's an area in Pennsylvania. He had 130,000 votes in a row. That's the same as the chances that if I say you go somewhere in the world and pick 1 grain of sand, and I'll randomly go pick a grain of sand, and what are the chances we pick the same grain of sand somewhere in the world? That'd be about those. He got 580,000 votes in a couple spikes in Arizona. And by the way, these things always happen in those weird periods where they shut down the voting tabulation and told everyone to go home, is when these weird things happen. One of them in Pennsylvania, another way to see it, he had 580,000 votes in 4 spike uploads of ballots. And of those 580,000, 3,000 were for Trump and the rest were for Biden. So it's 99.5%-ish for Biden. This just doesn't happen in nature. And also what doesn't happen, those machines that did the uploading, they should have been able to upload about 50 to 60,000 ballots an hour. And yet in one 90-minute period, they uploaded 300,000. They ended up getting 580,000 in. So they're physically uploading faster than the machines. And we have it down to the serial number of each machine in each location, and we know their capacity. You add it up, it could have been 50 or 60,000 ballots, and yet they somehow uploaded 300,000 in a 90-minute period. Should not have been able to happen. That tells you there's all kinds of gimmickry going on. And, we can talk about the forms of the gimmickry, but that's not people feeding ballots into a machine. That's uploads and electronic stuff going on and resulting in outcomes that are beyond quadrillions to 1, beyond winning the Powerball. It'd be like winning the Powerball 4 times in a row or something. And then this all happens, what do you know? Just when they kicked everybody out and said everyone has to go home and sleep and we're going to get some rest, and they kicked it and they sent goons to force the Republicans out. And what do you know? Some of the Republicans they stayed out, but they filmed, and what do you know? They saw people come in with backpacks, heavy backpacks in the meantime. You don't have to be Fellini to see how all these dots line up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it didn't just happen in the one county. It happened in multiple counties, almost simultaneous, same spike, almost coordinated, using what appears to be the same algorithm.
And oddly enough, it's all the counties that are on that list of the counties they have to cheat. If you just cheat these 5, 6 counties, you flip the right states, you flip the electoral college. It happened in just those places. Yeah, it's just gotten silly to even hearing people say, well, where's the evidence? There's all kinds of different evidence that all marries up together beautifully, from testimonial evidence to video evidence to statistical evidence to the evidence of the capability of the machines as manifested in their manuals and how this all can be done.
Well, the good news is you've got some of the data from at least one or more of the locations. But what concerns me is you look at Georgia and you've got this order to keep all the Dominion systems intact, not wipe them out. Then you've got the order, no, I rescind that order. Then you've got a new order. What happens in Georgia? Because the intention is, and they did this in 2017 in Atlanta, they wiped down their voting system. It wasn't the Dominion systems then, but they wiped it down. They're trying to do that now, and I've heard that's happening in Atlanta. What's going on in Georgia? Do you have any insight?
I do have quite a bit. It's intensely corrupt is the thing to know about Georgia. It's intensely corrupt. Another thing to know is I spoke with a very credible person 2 hours ago whom I've gotten to know through this, and they are bringing in fresh absentee ballots. In other words, they're manufacturing ballots off-site and bringing them in. And they're doing that this morning. This is Monday morning. You're not going to play this till Thursday. I can tell you, they have been filmed bringing in fresh absentee ballots today, which is, I think, at least 5 days past where all of that was supposed to be stopped. They are manufacturing fresh absentee ballots. Another thing you need to know is these Dominion machines, the readers also have little printers in them. So you feed a ballot into a Dominion machine, it can actually print a vote. It can print a vote, and not only can it print a vote, it has a library, and this is in their marketing materials. It has a library of natural looking marks. So they don't just print a perfectly round circle that just perfectly fills up the circle. They actually advertise they have a library of different marks that make it look like a human.
Why would you do that if you weren't trying to cheat? That makes absolutely no sense.
I know, it reminds me of, I remember once with my dear departed brother, we were sitting at a bar, and it was really at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We had just finished haying on the farm, and we were sitting in this bar down the road. And the bar, as we were talking, he's getting set up for the night. He was pouring rail liquor into his shelf liquor bottles as he was talking to us for half an hour. And finally, my brother said, I'm not sure you're supposed to be doing that, buddy, but I'm really sure you're not supposed to be doing it in front of us. Well, similarly, I'm wondering, why are they putting in their marketing literature? We can actually, our machines not only can print onto the blank ballots, but we can print on in a way that makes it look like it was a human. What that means is any machine that's been compromised, if any ballots have run through it, those ballots are now compromised, unless you're going to get into forensic analysis of inks and checks and stuff. Those ballots, you can recount them all you want. You don't know what was on those ballots when they came in. And given how easy it is to compromise these machines, either through, if you ever had physical access, it's child's play. There's a slot in the motherboard that should be soldered over. It isn't. Anyone with physical access can, for a few seconds, pop a chip in there. That machine's compromised forever. Anyway. Plus, there's a malware called QSnatch. You can Google ZDNet, which is a technology journal, had an article in July called 66,000 Dominion machines infected with QSnatch. QSnatch takes the credentials of people as they log in, the administrators, and sends them to China. So everything bad I just described can not only be done by bad actors in Maricopa or in the counties that Atlanta, it can be done by somebody sitting over in Xi'an, China at that military base where they hack. So people over there can be playing with these dials and such. It's just insane we let our country get to this point.
Well, that's an important point, because there is an executive order and there are laws in the United States against foreign interference in our elections. That's a basis and a reason for the president to put out an order demanding that all of these things be impounded so that they can be examined and we can get to the truth.
He should be doing that. Georgia's trying to wipe. They came out on Friday, said they want to wipe all their machines. Odd that. They're trying to wipe. We have to, if the president has that power, he should be using it, because all over the country, we can tell him just what he needs to seize. We know what's there.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I wish we had time, but I'll just ask you one question. Would blockchain solve this if we had a shared ledger?
Blockchain solves all of this. There is a company called Votes, VOATZ, and at my last company, Overstock, we provided the angel money. I have no ownership anymore, so it's not to my own benefit. I'm saying this. I have zero ownership, but Votes. Blockchain can solve this. Basically, what we're learning, once again, what you and I learned 10 years ago with Wall Street, is all human institutions are corruptible, because people are corruptible. They can be bought, and whether you're talking about regulators or senators or congressmen or journalists, or maybe judges, they're all for sale. There's one thing that even the elites with all their money cannot corrupt, and that is the laws of mathematics. And blockchain runs on cryptography, which runs on the laws of mathematics. And the goons cannot, even with all the money they have, they can't cheat the laws of math. So ultimately, a blockchain system will solve this. And I think we're going to find out, America, that we may be quite a bit, our collective will may be quite a bit different than what we've been being told for about 15 or 20 years. I think there's far more of this been going on at a local and state level than we ever had any idea. We know, by the way, besides just going on now in the presidential election, they're stealing congressional seats. No one's paying any attention to this. But in Nevada, California, Virginia, and Texas, there's overwhelming evidence that they're not just trying to steal the presidential seat. They're in the business of shaving and slowly moving Congress over in their direction, picking off seats using these methods and technologies.
Well,
So that's a lot to think about.
We're going to want to ask you back, Patrick, to the Economic War Room to talk about blockchain and all the potential it has beyond just elections. But on the election, I don't know if you've seen it, but we've got a website, a coalition of us pulled together called everylegalvote.com. And I hope that you'll take a look. I hope all our viewers will take a look. Also, economicwarroom.com/myvote, where we interviewed the hacker 2 years ago, and he told us that all this was going to happen if we didn't fix it. So bottom line is, Patrick Byrne, thank you so much for all that you're doing, what you did to help with solving the problems on Wall Street and rooting out the corruption that was there, and also rooting out the foreign influence that was there. You know, we've been on that for years now, trying to get China control out of our markets, trying to get the deep state out of controlling the finances of America. We're still working on it, and thank you for all the work that you've done there too. So thank you, Patrick Byrne.
Back at you, Kevin Freeman. We've been comrades in the same struggles for about 12 years now, and it's really it's always great to be in touch with you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's do it more.
Thank you.
Have me back anytime.
Thank you. So what we're seeing play out is perhaps the most intense economic warfare you will ever see, and that's the battle for the control of America is largely about the money. Tens of trillions of dollars are literally at stake, and if we lose integrity in our elections, we will lose America. The progressive agenda is frightening, and they're fighting with great intensity, and the plans they have are despicable. I mean, they're openly talking about re-education camps, limits on speech, intentions of taking permanent control of the voting process, whether by machines or removing the Electoral College or lowering the voting age or making new states or packing the Supreme Court. These are real agendas that are openly being discussed. You know, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. You can get all of this information in the battle plan that we prepared for this episode at economicwarroom.com. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.